Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Stranger Things.
Okay. Let's do it.
The show that we supernatural shamed Jesse into watching last episode.
Which everyone should do.
I'm glad because I still have 5 seasons of Supernatural yet.
Stranger Things is an 8-episode Netflix series, in case you didn't know, written and directed by the Duffer Brothers. Previously, they wrote and directed a horror drama film called Hidden, came out last year, and 4 episodes of the TV series Wayward Pines, which I'm not that familiar with.
I've heard of it, but I've never watched any of either of those other shows.
Yeah.
And the score was by Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein. They're 2 members of a synth group called Survive.
Sounds like
I feel like they are unsung heroes here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Stranger Things.
fantastic.
Right up our alleys. We're all the appropriate age.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I guess we talked about it briefly the last episode, didn't we, Melanie?
Did we?
I don't know. We just said it was awesome.
It is awesome.
So,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So, Jesse.
It's awesome.
Now, was it overhyped? Because that was my worry, because I know we recommended it, and at that point, like,
The internet
really started to hit full swing on it.
Right.
And actually, the big wave of internet hype came a little after I thought it was going to.
Oh, yeah. Even after I watched the whole thing, it was like all of a sudden, like everybody was like, bam. I'm like, really? This has kind of been a thing for a while, but
You guys are behind the curve.
right. I thought I was behind the curve and I wasn't, apparently.
So we just we're sitting out there waiting for that wave, I guess.
So did it
Yeah.
did it live up to the hype?
You know, like the first episode, which is really well done and it sets up the whole series, I was kind of like, yeah, it was all right. But then you get into the second episode, and I think it's either episode 2 or 3 where all the really scary stuff kind of hits.
Mhm.
And it feels less scary as time goes on. Like you see similar stuff happen later. But like the first time you see it in this series, you're just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I think we watched the second episode in the dark, and Holly was like, I'm not doing that again. Because, yeah, she had to go to sleep after that. And, wow.
Can we talk about the door?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we'd watch about an episode a night.
Yeah.
And there were 2 nights
Mm-hmm.
in which, and this is, Melanie has to get up earlier than me, so she'd go to bed before I would, and I'd stay up late. There were 2 nights in which the bedroom door had to remain open so that there was some kind of light shining in there while Melanie was going to sleep.
Because, and it's not just this scary movie, that's a big part of it, but I have those issues anyway sometimes.
Where you creep yourself out?
Yeah, I creep myself out. I hear noises and I don't know what they are, and I'm like, there's something in here. Or like with my feet. I hate having my feet covered when they're laying out. It's like, I just felt something brush against my foot. Oh my god, there's something in here. And I know it's not real, but my brain makes it real.
But it's pretty rare that you will have to leave the bedroom door open.
Yeah, usually I just come out and go to the bathroom and stuff.
And it happened like 2 nights in a row while we were watching this.
Yeah, it was. Well, it touched down all the creepy things that I feel when I sleep.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. You are starting to see the people that push back against it because it's become so popular.
Sure. And some of them have honest criticisms and that's fair. Mm-hmm. But it hits, I don't know. I think the thing that made it blow up so huge is the fact that it came out of nowhere. There was no hype leading up to this thing. Just like all of a sudden there was a thing and everybody that did see it started talking about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved it. I think it's very well made. I think it nails about everything it needs to. And I had heard just a little bit about it beforehand. I'd heard there was basically it amounted to I'd heard Netflix was working on and this is maybe a month before it came out. They were, there was going to be a new Netflix show called Stranger Things. I thought it was going to be more of a straightforward horror type thing or thriller placed in the 80s. And I was like, well, all that sounds cool. I'm on board. And I was waiting for it. Then I kind of forgot about it. And then they had a trailer. And the trailer almost didn't sell it for me. Like, it wasn't bad, but like the music in the trailer was like your usual run of the mill type score, you know. It looked like maybe an alien abduction thing or something. Well, then we watch the show and we know what that's about, where they, you know, why I would assume that. But it didn't even, like, all the really cool stuff in the show, it didn't even hit on any of that. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I still want to see it. And then it came out and it was awesome because I was like, it's got a legit synth score. I did not expect that. It takes place in the 80s. They nailed the look of it. And it just pulls so many cool elements from things. Yeah,
and the stuff with the girl when she's
which girl? 11?
Yeah.
Okay.
What other girl is there?
The older sister?
She's the older sister. She's not the girl. Anyway, when she's in the like dark watery whatever, that some of that stuff looks super awesome and I love it. I love that whole thing.
So, I mean, it's hard to talk about it, and this is one thing that a lot of people are talking about is it pulls so many things so directly, it's almost on the edge of, like, ripping things off.
Oh, yeah, derivative almost.
Yeah, and for me, I think it works. It works in obviously a different attitude, but it works in a Tarantino-type way. Tarantino will straight rip things off, but he has his own flair. He does it with flair, and he takes these things sometimes very directly, including plot points.
But he tells a new story with it.
Yeah, and exactly. And he'll take these things and elevate it or put it together and make this new thing that's awesome.
Yeah, it's almost like an homage.
Yeah.
Not instead of like ripping it off, he's like, look at this great thing and the great things you can do with it. Yeah.
And in the case of something like this, like there's several YouTube videos you can look up where it's like every Easter egg and every reference. And there's certain things where it's like, while watching the show, I didn't catch that, but it's like they consciously had to put extra work in to like mimic that exact shot from E.T. or this or that or whatever. And
oh, sure,
it's not like even a lazy thing. It's like they put extra effort in to fit some of the stuff in.
Well, and I think some of the best descriptions of this were where they would say that it was like a cross between Amblin Entertainment. So you had your E.T. beats, you had your John Carpenter with the synth, obviously, and also The Thing. I mean, like not only were there like posters of The Thing in there, but like there were moments where I was like, oh my God, this is The Thing, and it's so creepy. And Stephen King, so you have like the bizarre shop where you know, like fire starter things are happening, where you've got kids that have extraordinary abilities and what's going on and what's the consequence of that. So you have Stephen King, John Carpenter, Amblin Entertainment, the 80s as a whole, all wrapped up into one big package. And how could you not like it if you even remotely liked the 80s?
Well, I was going to say, I thought they were going for the 80s. Isn't that's solid? That's it right there.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's the thing that really took me by surprise is like, I was like, okay, it's going to be placed in the 80s. And I was hoping they'd kind of ride the recent trend of like, because, you know, obviously I dig that stuff. I was hoping they were kind of going to play on that. I didn't expect them to like, not only is it placed in the 80s, but like thematically and like story beats, like they pulled all that stuff from 80s type material. And it's like taking from all those elements, putting it together, filtering out like kind of the super cheesy moments that a lot of that 80s stuff would have and all that, and like refining it to here's the stuff that's cool. Some of it's blatant, some of it's more subtle. But, you got Poltergeist in there. The whole thing with the lights remind me of Poltergeist, where, and I mean even that whole plot point where the child is gone somewhere but kind of communicates through a thing. But it was like that playful, that like kind of creepy, kind of playful supernatural thing, mystery. And then you got healthy D&D, and it wasn't even just like, you know, it's 80s, these kids play D&D, like
they used it to explain the plot. It was crazy awesome.
Yeah, it's like, it's wove into the plot and very theme and concept of the whole show.
You didn't even need to know anything about D&D, and it somehow made more sense.
Yeah.
I was like, that is the best use of D&D in a multimedia thing I can think of.
And it has the Winona Ryder in it. Sorry.
Winona Ryder.
Oh yeah, she was brilliant too. I forget how good of an actress she is, but she nailed this.
See, there's a lot of that's one of Winona Ryder is one of the things that I hear. She's one of the more polarizing aspects.
Okay,
of it.
I guess I could see that, but
Because there's a lot of people that just.
I'm firmly in
hate on
the
it.
she nailed it camp.
I think she nailed it. I see. A lot of people are like, "Oh, she's terrible in it." I don't think she's terrible. I think she's good. I just think her character is horribly annoying. She's that super high, and maybe not as dimensional as some of the other characters. She's pretty.
Oh, yeah.
She's pretty one note for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I would imagine if you freaking lost your child and he was trying to communicate with you through lights, you would be pretty one note.
Yeah. I didn't think she was bad. I think if anything, her character is annoying. But even if she wasn't hysterical most of the season, I think her character would be annoying anyway. She's very high. She's one of those very high strung, nervous ladies.
Yeah, she looks like a bar lady to me.
I felt like she went full on Marlon Brando method acting for this because she looked haggard at parts. Like she went to work.
Yeah, she let herself not look so great.
Yeah, she let herself go for the role,
which is not something a lot of, particularly actresses, well, female actors. I don't know. I don't want to sound.
She's like the female name in this thing. Like she's the big name, I think.
And that's not easy. That's not necessarily easy for a female actor to do because, so much of. I'm not saying it's right. I'm treading lightly, but it's
a lot
tough.
of the.
It's built on looks.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a norm in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that's brilliant about this is it's another example of Netflix having a series that can take whatever's the norm in Hollywood and say, nah, we're going to try something else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got the same thing that's happening with Orange is the New Black. It's another Netflix series where they're in prison, so they're not going to look totally made up. It's just not going to happen.
I think the casting in this all around is interesting. The casting of the kids, and this is pretty much everybody agrees, the casting of the kids, the main central group, is great.
Yeah.
They all feel like they came from 80s. The Goonies and
Little
Stand
Will
By
Wheatons.
Me, and what's that?
They're like little Will Wheatons.
yeah.
Yep.
And then the casting of the teens is interesting because they're not. That was one thing. The older sister, I can't remember her name offhand. The character's name.
Yeah,
is that Nancy?
Yeah, she's kind of got a very unusual face structure.
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's not typical casting. She's not bad looking, but she's interesting looking, and a lot of the other teen cast is interesting looking.
Yeah,
I think my favorite of the teen was her friend that got sucked into the pool. She looks so
Barbara,
much
yeah.
like every other like best friend of in the 80s movies that was
if you look at
left aside or whatever,
the best friend, the kind of nerdy best friend of like 16 Candles
with the owl eye glasses and everything.
She's kind of like her character's dead on.
I know she was the best.
In fact, when I first seen her, I was like,
yeah,
they're taking all the 80s things because her outfit is so terrible, but it's the terrible 80s outfit.
If I had a complaint, I felt like that was a little too on the nose, like her fate.
Her fate, yeah.
Yeah, her fate is like, oh, she was destined for this to happen.
Is there weird sounds?
Oh,
it's your phone? God, that was creeping me out.
It's one of those Stranger Things.
Barb is my major complaint.
That she dies?
Well, okay.
Spoiler.
What? Oh, like her fate was known. They were like, that's not giving it away?
Oh, well, okay.
Anyway,
that's
but
fair.
we didn't give a spoiler warning.
Fine. Sorry. Spoiler.
But if we're going to talk about
after
her,
the fact, that's great.
If we're going to talk about her, if we're going to talk about her fate, like the fact that she is in the other world, that's some of my favorite part. Seeing the house party, like was his name Steven, his backyard, but in the upside down. Oh my god, cool.
The upside down was awesome in general. Oh, but I was gonna say that's one of the bigger complaints is it felt like, and they kind of played it a little bit this way, but it felt like nobody cared about Barb.
Yeah.
That she disappeared and nobody cared. And they played it off that way, but it was almost too much like the show didn't care. Like, they set it, she's not a major character, but they set her up. And then again, this is obviously we're well into spoilers. They kill her off, and like she gets a couple lines of dialogue from like the one character that interacted with her in the show, but we don't get the like. I mean, Will disappeared, and it was like a huge thing, and the whole town is looking. And albeit it's a little different with Barb, she was a teenager, but still, I just didn't buy that. Like nobody seemed to notice. Even after she was confirmed dead, nobody really seemed to notice.
But even with a small child, look at how long it took for anybody to even get on board with that. It was like he was gone days, I think, before they actually started freaking out.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt that was a weak point.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't seem that plausible.
It made me angry only because the sister's boyfriend's bad word friends didn't die. If they would have died, then I would have been okay with it.
But I guess when you put it that way, that's one of the strengths of the shows is taking like what you would expect to happen and then flipping it. Like I didn't expect her jerky boyfriend to end up not, he still wasn't a great guy, but
being that was the thing that I was like, they did flip that expectation for me, because I kept saying that to Holly. I was like, no, he's a jerk. He's going to be that guy, and she's like, no, I don't think he's that guy. And then she was right. Well, and I was wrong.
I kind of was thinking...
He kind of was, but they give him an arc. And I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I didn't know if he was going to be a good guy or a bad guy, but I knew that the other guy wasn't going to end up on top, the brother of Will.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, he's destined to
Jonathan
be alone and take pictures of people from afar. Poor guy.
Oh, poor guy.
Well, and they were good about, since they had a little... Oh, what?
At least he has good taste in music.
Yeah.
He has probably the best, most underground taste of music as of any small town rural kid in 1983.
Yeah.
It was a little stretch, but it's also like the kids having the Thing poster, or even the one kid having the Evil Dead poster in 1983. Yeah. The Thing was a flop.
Oh, yeah.
But
somebody loved it, or it wouldn't still be here, right?
True.
We loved it. No, but I can look past that because I'm like, well, that's fine. That's obviously I was gonna say filmmakers, but yeah, the filmmakers.
That was one thing I felt like the Evil Dead poster took me out of it for a second, because I was like, I feel like that's a modern Evil Dead poster. I don't feel like that's an 80s Evil Dead poster.
Well, and that's a good way to put it. Took me out of it for a moment. The Thing poster did a little bit, and the Evil Dead poster did a little bit. I mean, I still love it because I love The Thing and Evil Dead.
Sure.
But that's my complaint that I was trying to get at with the music, is it took me out of it a little bit. Not the music they played, but like the music he was talking about. And it's like,
maybe you guys didn't have the same 80s that I had, but they used to give out free posters at movies all the time to try to promote them. And I had tons of movie posters all over my room when I was like younger. Like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Cool World. Who ever saw Cool World? I did, because I had the poster.
I liked Ralph Bakshi.
Well, you know what? Maybe next decade, when the 90s are the big throwback thing, and we're watching Strangest Things that was set in the 90s, and there's a
Cool
World
I hope
poster.
They don't do that. Oh. Like when they had that 70s show, and then they tried to have that 80s show. Oh, I hope they don't do that.
Yeah. They didn't wait long enough. The 80s show might hit hard now.
Oh yeah, now it's a good period piece.
You gotta wait a decade for the next decade to be cool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, remember all the 70s and some 60s stuff in the 90s?
Yeah, I do.
Revival thing.
I do.
No, I guess it would have been big 60s stuff in the 90s. There's even the big miniseries TV event, the 60s. And then 70s stuff would have been the 2000s, the first decade.
Yeah.
And
that's a true show. And Bell Bottoms kind of came back for a sec.
Yeah.
I had bell bottoms.
And there's certain tight pants looked very bell bottomsies, and a lot of boys' haircuts started to look very 70s. I thought for a while in the aughts.
Like yours?
No, mine's just long. Mine doesn't have a style. 70s has like there's either a bit of a feather or a certain swoop one way or another.
Like your beard.
My beard has a style. I just have no control over
it's
it.
Cthulhu. That's the style.
Yeah.
Cthulhu.
It's
I understand this. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
once you see it, you can't unsee it. Yeah. So I don't remember where we were. Okay. Favorite characters?
Oh, that's hard.
The chubby kid.
The chubby kid?
I would say Dustin is a fan favorite for sure.
Yeah.
One of my favorite fan things that has come out was done by James Hance. He did Dustin from Stranger Things, and then he had him with Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. So that was just brilliant, and I was like, I wish I had thought of that.
I liked 11's awesome.
Yeah.
The older brother of Will was okay.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of liked him, even though he was a creeper.
Jonathan.
The main kid, because there kind of
Mike.
is.
Is it Michael?
He's okay, but he's kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
You know who's a big jerk? What's his name? The other kid. Basically, other than Will.
Lucas.
Yeah,
Lucas.
that kid's a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And
I felt bad for that kid though. Like he came around, but that was his job to be a jerk.
yeah, for the most part. And I was kind of like, oh, come on. Like, they're just going to have this character, like, just hit that over and over. But then they ended up playing it into, like, the characters, and it made sense. And it's like, well, he's kind of jealous. Because
every character had, like, a strong archetype, too. You know, like, I don't know, like, Dustin was kind of your... was it Chunk from the Goonies? It's like he was constantly worried about food, and he was not annoying like Chunk. He was kind of the heart of the group. Then you had Michael, who was very logical but open to things, and then you had Lucas, who was logical but not open to things. You know, like he was your Spock character almost. They almost went D&D archetypes with some of these guys.
Yeah, and a lot of archetypes from the movies and stuff that it pulls influence from, but they are also able to flesh the characters out, so they're not just one-dimensional. Like, I mean, it's basically what you're saying, yeah.
I think one of the best descriptions of the series that I had heard was that it was not necessarily like... It was a series, but it wasn't like a series. It was more like a really long movie.
Yeah.
Even though they took breaks in between, there were obvious episode breaks, and each episode kind of stands on its own. It still, if you took out the breaks, it would feel like one super long, fleshed out movie.
And it felt cinematic all throughout, I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of shows now, they're single camera shows. They're not shot like sitcoms. They're shot to be more cinematic, but it still doesn't always like elevate to a cinematic feel. And I thought Stranger Things did.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you think of Daredevil or Jessica Jones, like Daredevil's not the best example because they have some amazing set pieces in those seasons, but they look great, but sometimes they still feel like a series. Maybe more so Jessica Jones, but this definitely did have a movie feel all through it.
It felt like when they did It or The Stand, Stephen King's miniseries, except better because the end didn't suck hardcore.
And I'd say better production too. This looked
Well,
nice.
yeah, but those were old. Those were a long time ago.
This emulates a long time ago.
Yeah, okay.
In a galaxy far, far away.
But they can do more with money now because better cameras look better and they're cheaper to operate and stuff like that. Yeah.
But I loved It when I was younger, except the end. I'm like, this is stupid. Why is he a spider? But
it does not hold up.
Well, it's because the book fleshes all that out, and the movie does not.
Well, we'll have a new It soon. Have you seen the pictures of the clown yet?
Oh, yeah.
I don't really like it.
They're not. It's not going to be Tim Curry, and Tim Curry's terrifying without all the extra stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So
the makeup actually made him a little friendlier looking.
Oh yeah. When they picked the kid from Hemlock Grove, which was like, huh, okay.
Oh really?
We started watching that and we never.
We fell off.
It was all right. It got weird. First season was good. Second season, not as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember where we fell off of. Somewhere towards the end of the first season, I think.
I don't know.
It got pretty weird in the first season, but like the second season was like, okay, we're gonna wrap this up. Because basically we just had a second season so that we could tie up the loose ends.
Oh, interesting. It felt like it meandered a little bit at times.
Yeah.
That reminds me. So, what do you guys think of the pacing of this? You think it was paced out pretty well?
I thought it was paced well. I mean, I don't know.
I kind of think 8 episodes was about perfect. Because I think
Right.
if they went long, if there was more, given where, having seen it, where it ends up in the last episode, I think if they tried for a 12 episodes season,
Mm-hmm.
I think it really would have started a drag.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Like, because I'm sure there's more they could have put in there, but given what was in there, like, I can't think of how they could flesh what's there out more without it feeling like just filler.
Yeah, I was gonna say actually, they could probably drop some stuff and still be good.
Well, there's things that they kind of like draw out a little bit that don't. Well, you were complaining, Melanie, about, was it you?
I don't know.
Maybe it wasn't.
What
Maybe it was
about?
somebody else. There was a complaint about the teenager storyline where they're getting the bear trap and they're going and buying the stuff and all
Yeah, that was me.
how it didn't really pan out like you thought it was going to. But they ended up using the stuff.
Yeah, but it was so cartoony and it seemed unrealistic that they just go and let them. Yeah, take all this stuff and nobody's gonna question it. Or
This is America. They had cash. That's all they need.
Yeah. I think in a small town it would be worse. They wouldn't let some teenagers go off with,
1983. That's all you need to say. No, I thought that part was great though, because it felt like, I'm trying to think, Nightmare on Elm Street, where they're like, the kids got a plan suddenly, so they're like, it was almost
It was
montage.
the montage.
Yeah, it was almost montage. They're gathering together stuff. They're putting together a plan. The adults can't help them, so they're going to take care of it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing. There's like 3 stories going at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the season, it's almost frustrating. You're like, when are these going to come together? Because they all know like the same things or different angles of the same thing, but none of them know that the other ones know.
That was one thing that frustrated me. When it was the girl started talking about the thing that she saw to the boy that took the picture. And he's like, what did it look like? And he didn't wait for her to say it had no face. He told her that it had no face. And I'm like, that doesn't count. You could have just fed that to her.
It would have been better if he'd have waited till she said.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was great. And I thought that was like a perfect structure because you've got the movie, I don't want to say cliche, but you've got the kids movie, the Goonies or the E.T. And then you've got the teen movie with the, like, there's a little bit of the drama and like the dating stuff, and that turns into a thing, and the creepy brother, and then you've got the adult stuff with Winona Ryder and the
Popper.
Yeah. And I actually really liked his character too, the cops.
Oh yeah, he was really well realized, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Even the creepy one-dimensional doctor was kind of interesting because it's like, I don't like him, but I don't know why.
He looked so much. He was the perfect 80s villain. His hair, it was great.
Yeah.
He was practically a Christopher Walken character.
Yeah, he could have been a Walken. I've seen 80s movies with Walken as like a scientist type.
The sound, like, it's kind of off-putting at first, but then it's also like the sound editors were just trying to capture the period.
Yeah.
Like with the synth and stuff. It's like, okay, the synth is so totally 80s, and it's jarring to our modern ear, but it's perfect for the property.
Well, there's some people who just live with the 80s in their souls.
I did not. Well, okay. So I did not have that problem at all, but I listen. The 80s synth is my modern music at this moment. I listen to a lot of it. So I didn't have that problem, but I can see what you're saying. And that's one thing that was kind of interested to get to see how the general public would react to this, because it doesn't feel like it's dated, but it's like a period piece through and through. Like They're like, it takes place in the 80s. It looks 80s. It's going to sound 80s. But
Right.
like the best part of 80s. Because there's a lot of terrible 80s music and stuff. And they didn't go with any of that. So
They really didn't touch on any of the pop music, did they?
there's not the super pop stuff.
They didn't go 80s like Safety Dance or anything.
But
They didn't say we could dance if we want to.
there's a lot of timely. Well, see, something like this, I think, benefits from having time filter out the crap. Not that the safety
Yeah.
dance is crap.
No,
Because
yeah.
you can dance if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it would have felt way too on the nose if they had included it.
But they did. There is a lot of contemporary music in it. In fact, that's the first thing. Like there was an official Spotify playlist going around before the score got released ever. That's all the the music from the show. But it's, if you were actually in the 80s or watching a movie that takes place in the 80s, you're more likely to get kind of crappy 80s songs because it was just like, well, that was out when the movie came out and they're going to throw it in there. And in retrospect, yeah, it's kind of a crappy song. But now they're not going to put a crappy song in there. They're going to put something that stand the test of time. Like, yeah, it's from the 80s, but everybody knows it and they love it. I make synthwave music, which is 80s synthy sounding stuff. And so this show coming out and being as good as it is and having that kind of score, it was
validation.
Yeah, it's super exciting.
Yeah.
And it's you still see it creeping into mainstream stuff, but this is, I think, one of the bigger mainstream hits to really pull from the whole 80s nostalgia thing.
Yeah.
So that was Stranger Things. I think we should put a bow on this thing.
I think you're right. It's awesome. Go watch it if you haven't.